Hi, I'm here with Mandy today. Very excited. Mandy and I have known each other for 8 years. We just worked out she's been speaking for 8 years and had some amazing feedback from clients and just good times, and I've heard her speak a number of times. It's brilliant, but it's a chance for me to go in depth with her and get some stuff which maybe we've never had before. So the question I start with, do you miss it?
It's an interesting one actually, because I do miss the flying. I miss the raw thrill of low-level flying, particularly fast, low, especially through the mountains of Wales and things like that. And I miss the camaraderie. Okay. So I really miss the teamwork. The one thing I don't miss is you're off to Afghanistan in a week's time, and that disruption constantly, which is something that you have to accept when you're in the military. It's part and parcel to the job. But that's the one thing that I don't miss, and I love now that I'm more in control of my own destiny and what I do and what I work on. And
how much have you mapped out your career since leaving the military, or has it been?
Can I say I'm an organic grower? Does that work?
Yeah. Careful organic growth.
Yeah, exactly. It was interesting. So when I left, I retrained as an airline pilot. And then I realised that that was not where I actually saw my future lying. And also my husband was an airline pilot. I had 2 little boys. How was it going to work? I then retrained in human factors training in the aviation industry. So looking at all the human elements that basically hopefully keep us safe in the air. Okay. And then I started to go into the speaking world, which is when, I met you guys. Absolutely. And it was really interesting. From then I realised that the 2 worlds I'd been in, the human factors world and the speaking world, were overlapping completely, because all the things that keep us safe in the air, bizarrely, are what make businesses actually highly profitable. And so whenever I was speaking to people, and I'd say, what do you want me to speak about? That would be like culture, communication skills, decision making under pressure. Well, they're the things that we do really well in aviation. So I sort of mixed the 2, and from there, although I didn't know that was going to happen, it has hence grown organically. And it's been really nice to share my business between both the keynote speaking world, but also growing my own business as well, which I've called Experience from the Front Line. Okay, and have you got a plan? Yeah, I do have my plan this year is I'm climbing up Kilimanjaro in October. Oh, wow. Which is really exciting. I'd been talking of goals so much, and then I realised I'd better practice what I preach.
And are you looking forward to it?
I cannot wait. I'm actually really excited, and the second I signed up for it, it made me remember why it's so important we do have goals, because I talk about it all the time when I'm on the stage, and I suddenly thought, when was the last time I set myself a really good concrete goal? And then, of course, it maps out the entire year to that point, and you can involve other people in that plan as well, and it also opens other doors. Would you consider yourself a naturally, no, that's a wrong thing to say, but naturally driven person, as in you need targets, or because I always imagine military people, and having spent a lot of time speaking to them, they are very focused over what they want to do. We are focused, and I think you do set yourself quite specific goals, and especially when you're in the military as well, you'll think, hold on a minute, this is my next one and the next one, and you can sort of map out a career. It's been interesting for me going in the business world and suddenly going, oh gosh, my business consultant will often say to me, Mandy, you really need a business plan. I go, I'm an organic grower. They go, no, you need a business plan. But actually, again, goals-wise, I've been really looking towards sort of a 5-year plan, building my business as much as I can for the next 5 years, and then I want to do some serious travelling. And what I hope to do is coordinate my travelling with speaking, and then hopefully get loads and loads of new material that I can actually take on the stage. Yeah. So taking it back, kind of the aviation world, are you still in? I would say yes if you'd asked me at Christmas. But at Christmas I finally hung up my flying boots, which was really sad. It was sad actually.
Why?
So I'd been flying as a volunteer reservist in the RAF, flying cadets, so Air Training Corps cadets. Is
that scary, dealing with cadets?
It's quite tiring actually. It's bizarrely way more tiring than other flying, because you're getting someone that's never flown before, and they're getting into your aircraft, and you need to really embrace that fear. You need to work on them, motivate them, throw so much positive energy at them. And actually that's quite tiring.
You'd have like in a kind of a learner car, like a little other rear mirror. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, hold on, stay well clear of us. Yeah. So I mean, you're putting a lot of positive energy into them, and if you're doing that for 8 cadets a day, each for half an hour plus the turnaround in between each one, you're in the aircraft for a long time, and actually you're meant to be doing about 50 hours a year, and I just felt I was falling short year on year, and I just got to the point where I thought, life is really busy in the week, and come the weekend I want to see my kids, I want to do the mum things, I want to be the football matches and the rugby and things like that, and I was having to do the flying at the weekend because I wasn't fitting it into the week, and so actually I had to make a call. But the door is not shut there at all. In fact, I've said keep my picture on the wall because there are no other women on the board, and I do not want female cadets coming in at the age of 13 and seeing an entire wall full of men.
Go on, let's talk about that for a minute. Why?
It's shocking, I think, really. I mean, the military has done quite a lot. I mean, you look at the RAF's latest recruiting campaign, I think it's absolutely inspirational. I love it. It's basically saying the RAF was the first of all the services to open their doors to women, and it's a really clever advert. But they still seem to struggle to get girls through the door. And I don't really know why, I'll be brutally honest, because to me it's an exciting career. Why would it not appeal to anybody that does not want to be office-based, that loves the sense of teamwork, challenge, leadership, all of those things that actually, it should be regardless of gender. And for me, the flying side, you know, Tornado is going out of service this month, which is very sad. But I did go to a fantastic party at Hangar.
That's why it's worthwhile going out of service.
Yeah, exactly. And we did end up sitting on the wing of a Tornado in a room full of 1,000 aircrew and ground crew, anyone who'd ever served on Tornado. This was last week. And it was really sad. There was 5 female aircrew there, myself and another pilot and 3 navigators. And that was it, 5 females.
Are they not applying, or are they not getting through the training?
They are. They're getting through the training, you know, as much as any of men that are getting through. I mean, it's a really tough training, you know, it's a sort of 4 to 5 year training when you're in. But they're seeing an equal sort of numbers of getting through, but you're still not getting many women applying and through the door in the first place.
So if you were put in charge of, what could they do differently? You say,
well, I think it's all about role modelling. And so one of my big things is I do a lot of work with charities. One of the charities I work for is Inspiring the Future. And that's all about going into schools. I'm really about the grassroots, so going in right at primary level. I'm also doing some work with WISE, Women in Science and Engineering. They have just set up a huge project in conjunction with HarperCollins, which is all about a little girl that dresses up in clothes, a bit like Mr. Ben of the old days, you know, but it's a girl called Tara.
Relate to what I
Yeah, let's get to the level there. But Tara, basically, she goes into a dressing up box and she comes out in what was a predominantly male-dominated environment, clothing, so fighter pilot, paleontologist, and they've based the pilots one on me, which is lovely. So those books are going into all primary schools, and they've done a fact sheet on a day in the life of a fast jet pilot, of which I'm featured in there. And so then hopefully those youngsters that have any sort of interest, we're trying to break down that traditional gender stereotyping that even at the age of 6, you know, when you ask primary school children, you know, what gender is a firefighter, a fast jet pilot and a surgeon, they're still going to say 95% will say a boy's name. Absolutely. And so actually it's getting into that level to me to say these jobs are open. And
do you feel positive? Do you think it can be done, or do you think
I think it's always going to be an upward struggle. I think, you know, but I do think it's about positive role models. So I think it's about getting people that are in these roles out to the public to actually say, you know what, we are here. You know, it's not just showboating the one or the 2 of them, but it's almost saying that, you know, women are there on the front line and they are doing these jobs and they are open to them. But generally girls, and this was one of the things that came out when I've been working with Inspiring the Future, is that girls will generally choose a career where they've only met somebody in it. So if you think about that, if they've never met a female fast jet pilot, they're going to assume that that's not a career that's necessarily open to them, which is really interesting. Whereas boys will generally look at all careers. Women like to have met somebody.
Why?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that goes into that psychology. When you look at youngsters at primary schools, girls tend to assume they can't do it until they prove they can, and then they excel at it. Boys tend to think, well, I can do it, and then they realise they can't, and they're shocked. They can't believe it. What's going on here? But so is that when you look at that whole thing, like Carol Dweck's growth mindset over fixed mindset, you know, generally girls do have a great growth mindset, but it's about that building confidence slowly from an early age.
Did you reflect back on kind of in terms of your career and you getting into it, and did you have the role models who gave you?
Yeah, I mean, not actually in the military, but my mum was an incredibly strong female role model. She brought up 2 girls, so my sister is now a medical director of a hospice. having basically struggled at school and was told that she was never going to be a doctor, so set her sights on becoming a nurse. And she said, no, I want to be a doctor. And so she fought against it. And my mum always had this opinion of, if it's going to be someone, why shouldn't it be you? And I think it's a nice philosophy, actually, or, you know, having that in the background, constantly going through. Because, you know, so often we hear people say, oh, yeah, but only 1 in 2,000 will get in. Yeah, well, why shouldn't that be me? Because actually I've done everything that I should do, and I'm in just as great a position as anybody else. So I think that's a really good motto to have for life.
Yep. And then when you went into the military, did someone kind of, someone natural?
Bizarrely not females again. So, I mean, Jo Salter was the very first female Tornado fast jet pilot. But again, she was just a couple of years ahead. So actually, bizarrely in the military, I never met Jo. We've met and spent a lot of time together post-leaving, but not while we were in. Actually, for me, it was about individuals. So at university, I joined a club called the University Air Squadron. The boss of that squadron had absolute blinkered belief that I could make it. Oh, really? And that's when I failed all the tests to be a pilot. And yet he said, hold on a minute, this is not right. Mandy's proved herself in the air. You know, I'd won national aerobatics competitions against all sponsored male pilots. This is not right. And so actually you need people, and I say this is really for business as well, you need to have people that actually truly believe in you, that see your potential and are willing to go that little bit of an extra mile for you. Generally, when they've got nothing to gain themselves, they're doing it because they see and believe in you. And I think that's really important. So he really pushed me to butt up against the system and say, hold on a minute, maybe the system needs to change. Okay. So I think that's important that we do have people like that as well.
And I think it takes nicely on something which I'm passionate about at the moment, or not at the moment, passionate about in terms of the world of mentoring. Yeah. What's your view of kind of the world of mentoring and kind of how it exists, and do you mentor?
So it's interesting actually. I think I used to be in a stage where people were almost given a mentor, and I don't think that works quite as well as when we start self-selecting mentors. So I'm a real believer that you will meet people in life that you connect with, and that you set your sights on wanting to be like them because they are a role model. And I think it's up to the individual sometimes to go up to that person and say, almost, will you be my mentor? Yes. And bizarrely, you know, there's a lady, actually, I met her through spinning, but she's an incredibly, you know, powerful female role model. And we went for coffee yesterday, and where I was going, oh, I'm not really very good at this. She was like, Mandy, what on earth are you talking about? You know, and she's like, because we still have that imposter syndrome a little bit. And it's, I think often when you meet somebody, and I said, oh, I'm not a strategic thinker. She said, well, I am. So I'm really good at that bit. So I'm going to start strategically thinking for you. And I think we can sometimes dumb down where we are, but actually it's if we can find the right mentor or the right role model to look up to, and actually just try to, not copy, but just take the points that you think, that's something that I see that Nick, for example, does really well. How can I actually? But then, do you have advice as to how that? Because someone I've been asked on numerous occasions, how do I go out and find a mentor? And my advice is go out and find a mentor. Ask them, especially in the business place. So you know there will be people in the business. It might be someone that's say 2 stages ahead of you. It might be someone 6 years, or it might be someone actually in the next step up, or it could even be a colleague that you just see has certain aspects. And I think it's about approaching those people that you almost have to have the confidence to say, will you be happy to mentor me? And it doesn't almost have to be so formal maybe, but are you happy to meet me for a coffee? And that goes back to what we were talking about at the start, which was that goal setting. Yeah. So when you look at yourself in a business environment and you think, do you know what, in 10 years I want to be there, 5 years I want to be here, so what do I need to do tomorrow? And that tomorrow might be, I need to find the right mentor for me to encourage me to go down that pathway.
And what's your opinion about the other side in terms of the mentor themselves? Why would they do it? Is it a natural human thing? Or?
Oh, I think it's a really human thing. I mean, the best example I had was actually flying a cadet in the Air Training Corps. Yeah. And she'd been quite negative throughout the flight. And I talk about her in my speech, actually. And people quote Emily back to me all the time. But actually, it was at the end when a year later, she came back to the squadron to fly again. And I saw her in the corridor, and as we passed, she went, Ma'am, I just wanted to tell you, I got all my GCSEs and I'm doing my A-levels. And it was this moment for me where you realise it doesn't take much for you, if you are in a position whereby you can help somebody, that actually you gain way more almost than they do. Yeah. Because passing on your love of a career or your passion or perhaps your tips on how to succeed to the next generation and then watching them blossom, how incredible is that for you? And I think that's probably the most rewarding of anything. And I think it's about paying it forward. It's about, you know, being a little bit more retrospective and not focusing on I, me, where am I going? Because guess what? That selfless behaviour always pays back, and that's how we actually accelerate as well.
So let me take you back to something kind of in terms of your mentor yesterday from the spinning class.
Yeah.
I spoke to you, and one of the things I've never thought about was the fact that you might have moments of self-doubt about yourself.
Yeah.
I suppose, have you always been a confident person? How do you deal with the kind of, when your entire career has been against the norm, I suppose?
Yeah, it
How
has,
have you dealt with those moments when you're like...
Sit in your room and cry? Sorry, no. That works really well, a bit of a howler. No, actually, I think when you have those moments of self-doubt, I think it's about trying to reaffirm where you're up to. So, for example, going through training, you are surrounded by an incredible team. So the course mates that you have, they are your cornerstones, they are your brothers in arms, and they are the ones that sort of get you through. And that's what I really found in training. Getting to a squadron which was 100% men and me was more of an interesting one. And especially there were times, especially one episode in particular that sticks in mind, when I was in the Gulf. And I'll be honest, I was a victim of bullying. It was my first time out there. I'm working with, 40 pilots and navigators. I'm the only female. I'm away for 2 to 3 months, and you have one 20-minute phone call home a week at those days. There was no mobile phones. And, one guy decided that he was in a bad place and he was going to make my life miserable as a consequence. And actually, I nearly left at that point. I got so low out there that I would be sort of ringing home, and my husband, or he was my fiance at the time, going, "Get a grip! You've not worked so hard to get to this point, to be knocked down by one individual." But you know what? When you're living in it and it's really tough. Yeah. When you remove yourself, and I got out of that zone because I then came back home, I could then face him and say, "Are you aware that you made my life miserable?" And it was very, very interesting because he had no idea. He was going through. He was in a tough place at home himself. He had a brand new baby. He wasn't there to see, and he was frustrated with that, and he wanted to take it out on somebody. But you know what? He had a moment of reflection, and he came up to me the following day and said, "I've been thinking about it all night. You're right, and I'm so sorry, and I will make sure that in my career I do never let that happen again." So again, sometimes about facing people, but in the right circumstance when you can do it.
So can I ask the kind of? I get to meet some amazing people from military, and and ultimately they do educate businesses about how to operate, because they are kind of the military is definitely much more forward thinking. So, did you find that when you were in it, that actually some of the stuff that's going on in business now you're in business, we're still catching up with stuff that you almost already know or inherently? I
think it's interesting actually. So, one thing that I've always loved about the military is the fact that you do your leadership training first, before you learn about your trade. So hold on a minute, I'm going to spend 9 months becoming a leader, before I've learned to fly. Because for many people, they can then find themselves perhaps in an area of conflict. They might find themselves being pushed right to the edge of their capability at a very, very early stage of their career. But if you think about business, we take somebody on, we give them the tools of the trade, and then we might send them on a leadership course or a management course if they're lucky, or they just get put into the next stage and sink or swim. And actually so often, for example, the healthcare is a classic world for that, whereby they're brilliant doctors, but they're not necessarily fantastic managers or leaders, because they're doing it because they're sort of forced into that next step up. And I think having that leadership training to fall back on is really important. And one of the things that they really try to get across is that you're not just transactional leaders. You're not there just because you're paid to do it. You need transformational leaders. So you need somebody that walks into a room and actually people feel inspired to follow them. And so when you look at leadership, and I think this is one of the big things for business, what does make a leader? And I think when you break it down, we could perhaps look at our politicians at the moment. Do we have leaders out there that we think, I would follow them to the end of the world? What is it therefore that's creating leadership? Is it charisma? Is it communication skills? And actually, by breaking that leadership down and thinking about those actual aspects of perhaps personality, is it created? Can it be made? Can we learn to be a good leader? And I think it is a combination of all of those. But I think actually recognising that for business we need strong leaders within those businesses. Therefore, actually teaching them the way to communicate really well, teaching them you know, how to have a presence in a room, how to hold yourself. It's really, really important, and that's something the military do well.
So, and do you believe that kind of a good leader can drop themselves into any business and lead, or do you think?
Yeah, I do. So I mean, that is classic military. So you leave the military and you assume you've got one skill set, which is, I don't know, if you're a pilot that you can fly, that if you're an engineer you can go in the engineering world. Bizarrely, why is it that so many military people end up in project management or end up as consultants? Because their skill set is very, very transferable. And I've done a lot of work with, you know, resettlement and things like that, because actually businesses can scoop up some fantastic people leaving the military who have got those skills of being able to analyse a situation, things like situational awareness, you know, basically taking in the whole, not just getting fixated on one task, and actually being able to analyse that bigger picture.
But then, I say on the flip side, does the military not do enough to almost educate you guys as kind of the possibilities once you leave?
Yeah, I think maybe, but I also think some of the military perhaps does not do as well as the strategic thinking side of things. So we are really good at perhaps that management, the process, the there, the now. Are we educating our people when they are in the military to be more strategic thinkers about bigger picture? And therefore I could see where perhaps when you go into then the business world, there's definitely a place within that. And you will have some people that are fantastic strategic thinkers, but have we done enough to actually grow that while they've been in the military? I don't know.
Tell me more about Kilimanjaro.
So Kilimanjaro, 20 women.
Okay.
Which is going to be interesting for me because I've only ever worked with men.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole different dynamic.
I know. So we're going with a fantastic company or expedition organisers, and we've got a brilliant leader that's going to be taking us at their Charities, who's done quite a lot of mountaineering, and I've worked with her at a few events which we called Attitude at Altitude, which sits perfectly within our theme. Nice. And when she said would I go on it with her, I honestly almost leapt at the chance immediately. Because I'd been wanting a challenge that was achievable, going back to your SMART, you know, plans and goal setting, that was achievable but did not involve ropes or near death. Those two items. So I wasn't after an Everest type challenge. Okay. And Kilimanjaro feels one that is challenging because only 50% of the people that undertake it actually make it to the top. And you can, the one thing I'm slightly concerned about is the altitude sickness. So the one thing you can't, I mean, we're brilliant people for control the controllables. So I can do all the training, I can, you know, do everything that I can control, but I have no idea how realistically my body, physiologically wise, will cope with altitude. So we are working in collaboration with a university though who've got these altitude bedrooms. So myself and all my team are going up and sleeping in the altitude bedrooms. And
are you all training together in the build up to it? Or
well, we are from lots of different areas. So there is quite a core group from my home city, Winchester. So there's about 8 of us, and we are doing quite a few walks together at the moment. And there will be, obviously, I think what's quite nice with a group that size is you can get pockets, and there'll be people that you really want to chat to. And once you get bored, you can move on to the next person.
How long does it take to get up?
It's a 7-day expedition, so 5 up, 2 down. So I have to be honest, it's just ignited perhaps the one aspect of my life that I felt was missing a little bit, which was just that new challenge.
Right, so we're going to see bigger and bigger challenges every year from you.
Oh, yeah,
I'm expecting.
I am not doing Everest. Can you quote me at that? Because when I'm doing Everest in 3 years, it's on camera. I am not doing Everest. Yeah, no, that's the plan.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you so much indeed for your time.
No, thank you.
It's been a pleasure speaking as always.
Yeah, lovely to speak to you, Nick.
More.
Yeah,
Cheers.
thanks then. Bye-bye.